Hey guys, welcome back to your video. In this video I'm going to show you how you can build your very own library in Android Studio, and also how you can publish that so that other people in the end can include that in their project, just like this here. So you can see I created that library and I included it in this project. It will just give me a very simple composable here. Of course, that can contain more complex code. But just to demonstrate that here, how that works, I use this image preview composable, which just in the end looks like this, a very simple image card with a text and a little gradient. And that's going to be what we will publish to Jetpack, so that you and that others can also include that in their project by just adding such a dependency here in their Gradle file. Okay, so your situation now should be that you have some kind of composable or any kind of code that you actually want to put in your library. That doesn't need to be composable, can be anything. Of course, it doesn't make any sense if I show you that here, how to make this image preview, because that's not the focus of this video. You can choose any composable. If you just want to take a simple text to learn how to do it, you can do that. But of course you can choose anything. If you want this image preview, check the code in this description. So all you basically now have is such a very simple composable in your root directory here of your Android Studio project. And that's it. You don't have any library, you didn't publish anything. All you have is this composable. The first step when building a library is to do that locally. So what we will do is we will create a so-called module. If we take a look here in our project hierarchy, then we already have one module in our project, and that is our so-called app module. That is the main module, which will, if you have many different modules, it is used to just combine all these to use in the final executable app. However, when we build a library, we of course don't want to share our main activity or anything else that's in our app module. No, we actually want to kind of separate that from our main app. So what we'll do is we will right click on Android library. That's my project name. So we go to new and we create a new module. And then this window will open up. We have a bunch of templates here. And now for building a library, the two major ones, or the two templates that you will use the most frequently, will either be Android library or Java or Kotlin library. What's the difference? Well, an Android library can contain Android dependencies. So we want to make a library here with a composable, which is an Android dependency. So we can only use composables in an Android project. So we need to select Android library. If, however, you have a library that only needs Kotlin code or only needs Java code and no Android dependencies like the context, like activities, fragments, then you're also good to choose the Java or Kotlin library. The advantage here is that you can also use this in, for example, KMM projects, Kotlin multi-platform, because then you can share this code between Android and iOS, which isn't possible if you choose Android library. But usually you pick Android library because then you also have things like resources, But you need to think about what do you need for your purpose. So we select that. We need to give our module a name, which I will choose image-preview for. Then it will create a new package name. The rest is fine and we can click finish. And now Gradle will create that module for us. Important to know is that each single module in our project has its own build.gradle file. So you might remember that if we take a look in the Android view here, there is a build.gradle module app file, a build.gradle project file, and a build.gradle module image preview file now. So we now have an additional Gradle file that was generated for our new image preview module, which you can see here. So this new module is now independent of our app module. So we have our own Gradle file. We can specify our own dependencies that we need only for our module, which we actually want to do now. So we want to open, first of all, let's open the build.gradle project file, which just contains configuration that applies to our whole project, so to all modules. That's why we only have one of this project file. But what you want to make sure is that you use the compose version 1.0.3. That is what I use here, and it will work with the dependencies I use. Depending on when you watch this video, you can also increase that. But yeah, if you choose this version with these dependencies, then it won't lead to any version issues. You also want to make sure that you choose the Kotlin version 1.5.30. So you need to replace that for the Kotlin Gradle plugin. And then you're already good to go. Then we can jump into this Android library.imagePreview module. Because right now, if we would like to take our image preview composable and put it in our image preview, well, let's actually do that. Let's open the image preview package here, which is just empty. We can take our image preview here from our app module, cut it out, paste it here in this image preview module, click refactor, and there we go. Now we have that in here. We can replace the package name here, pressing Alt plus Enter and Enter again. And you see we have a bunch of dependency issues here. The reason is because, as I said, each module has its own set of individual dependencies. So we need to include these compose dependencies for our new module, our image preview library, again, in its own Gradle file. So if we take a look here, that's the image preview Gradle file. Then these other dependencies Android Studio automatically included, but as you can see, there are no compose dependencies. It still uses the material design dependency, app comp core, but no compose ones. So we can actually remove all of these. We don't need these. Instead, we want to include some compose dependencies. So we open our build.gradle app file, in which these are already included, and we just want to have this compose UI and compose material dependency. We copy that, go to image preview, and just paste it here. Also, what we need here to build a compose project is are actually some Gradle options here. If we take a look in build.gradle app, then you will see there are some more options like build features compose is set to true, and this use IR, for example, is set to true. So we basically want to copy this stuff. So these three option blocks, copy these, go to image preview, and simply paste these here. Kotlin options is a duplicate now, so let's remove that one. But that is pretty much it already. You will also see up here for the plugins block that it now says ID com Android library. That will now indicate that this Gradle file will belong to a library. If we take a look here in the app module, it will say ID com Android application. So it will specify this Gradle file as the Gradle file of the application module. All in all, if you build a library, you should always make sure that it only really contains the configuration it needs, that it only contains the dependencies it needs, because if you include more dependencies in your libraries and you then include the library in your actual project will contain all dependencies the library needs, of course, because otherwise the library wouldn't work. So really only use the dependencies the library really needs. So right now, as you can see, we just separated our image preview composable here, which still doesn't know these dependencies. So let's click sync now. We have this file with our image preview composable, and that is now just separated from our actual app module here. So if we collapse all that, you can see we just have a separate image preview module, which is our library. And that contains the code our library should also include in other projects. Now, if we go back to our main activity, which is located in our app module, and we would like to use our image preview composable, you will notice there are no suggestions. We can include that image preview composable, even though we have that in a module. And the reason why that doesn't work is because we didn't include our module. So that will now be treated already as a library, and we need to include that library using our build.gradle app file, because that belongs to our app module. Scrolling down, and this time we don't enter such a dependency string here, or URL, not really URL, to include that because it's not published yet. Instead, it's only local here for our project. So what we want to do is want to say implementation project, and then here in this project block, we can specify the module name we want to now include in this app module. And that is always prepended with a colon, and then the actual module name, which is image-preview. If we then click synchronize now and go back to main activity, now you will notice that there is actually an image preview composable that we can now include, because we told our build.gradle app file that we want to include our local image preview library. So far so good, but right now other people wouldn't be able to include this because they don't have this library and these library files on their machine. To actually publish your library now to a repository, so a remote repository, from where other people can easily include that with such a dependency here, yeah, for that we actually need to push it to a repository. There are multiple repositories which I'm sure you've already heard of. For example, Maven Central, which is the most trustworthy one, but also the most difficult one to push something to, because they really want to make sure that you are the person who you say you are, and then you need to do some verification stuff, maybe verify your domain, that you actually own this domain you actually say you own. So in the end, your package name, for me, it would be plcoding.com. And yeah, that's difficult and not what I want to do in this tutorial. Instead, I want to show you how you can use jetpack.io to publish your library. That is the easiest way to publish it. All you really need to do for that is to push your project to a GitHub repository, which I hope you know how to do, but I will show you this step by step here. To publish that, there is an amazing plugin here in Gradle that will do that automatically for us. So we want to actually scroll up, actually not here, in the image preview build.gradle file, scroll up to the plugins, and we want to add another one, which will be Maven-publish. And now we need to configure that plugin that we just entered. We can do that down here below our dependencies block in our library Gradle file. And you want to paste this, and it needs the final curly bracket. You can just write this off or simply copy and paste it down below from my GitHub repository. And of course, replace your group ID and artifact ID. So group ID will just be com.github.your GitHub username. So just replace Philipp Lackner with your GitHub username. And the artifact ID will be, yeah, how you want your project to be called. If you did that, you want to click synchronize now. And yeah, that's already it for this Gradle file. A final thing you need to do before actually pushing this stuff to GitHub now is we want to switch to the project view and we want to create a new file here. So in the root package, new file, and it will be called jetpack.yml. That will just be a configuration file for Jetpack, because I needed to include this stuff here, essentially, to specify that Jetpack should use the OpenJDK 11 to build this stuff, because for some reason it always used a different SDK and it didn't use the one specified in Gradle. So I needed to do that so the build doesn't fail on Jetpack. So just paste the same, and Jetpack will then automatically use that configuration file to adjust its build settings. Now, so little recap, we just included this Android module here, which contains our image preview composable. So just a file with that image preview composable, and we didn't push it yet to GitHub. That is what we want to do next. So we want to go to VCS, version control system, and click share project on GitHub. Then you need to give your repository a name. That name will also be contained in the actual dependency string afterwards, in the implementation, blah, blah, blah. I will just leave it at Android library. Yeah, it's okay. Just for this demonstrational purposes here. We want to click on share, make sure it's not private. And then it will create that GitHub repository. Of course, you need to have your GitHub account linked to Android Studio. Then we click add here, make sure it also adds this Jetpack YML file, and it will basically just push your whole project to GitHub. Now you can see successfully shared project on GitHub. So the next step is to actually open GitHub in your browser. So here I am in my GitHub repositories. You can see there is the new repository Android library. We want to click on that, and right now we wouldn't be able to actually include this image preview module in other apps. What we need to do for Jetpack to actually build this is we need to create a release here on GitHub. You can see there is a releases block. We want to click create a new release. So for each version of your library, you want to create a new release, and that will then decide about the version number that will just be appended at the end of your library when you include that. So here, for example, in build.gradle app, you see there's always a version number at the end. And for each release you do, you just choose a different version number that you just append after this last colon. So here in GitHub, we want to choose a tag, and this tag is this version number I talked about. So let's just say 1.0 for the initial version. Press enter. We want to use the master branch for that. We only have that. We need to give this release a title. I already have one here. Compose image preview, for example. And you can then describe this release. I can just say this is for demonstrational purposes on YouTube. So far so good. You can then click publish release to actually publish that. There you go, there's your release. You can also download the source code of this release as a zip file. We don't need to do that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to go to Jetpack.io. This is the website from Jetpack, and here you can actually search for a Git repo URL. So if you search for your repository and it finds that, you know that it's that you're able to include that. Or if it didn't work, if the build failed for Jetpack, you will also find your error logs here. So you see, we need to enter our Git repository URL here. So in GitHub, we go to our actual repository here, copy the URL, paste it here, and click lookup. And you can see it actually finds version 1.0. We can then say get it. You can see the log is we're still waiting for the log because it's currently building. But if we click get it and we hope that the log actually succeeds, you can see you get instructions how you can now include that library in another project. So on the one hand, we need to include this Maven URL Jetpack in our build.gradle settings file. And we need to include this dependency here in our build.gradle app file or any other module. Let's just hope nothing bad will happen in this log, and we just go back to Android Studio here in our Android library project. And now I will remove this project implementation because we want to test if it actually works to get the dependency from Jetpack and not from our local project. So let's just paste what we copied from Jetpack. Of course, that will now look a little different for you. That was one step. The other one was that we need to include the Jetpack URL as a Maven repository. So we go to, let's actually switch back to Android. And then we go to settings.gradle. And you can see here we can specify repositories. Right now this Maven Jetpack isn't in there. So we want to include that Maven URL https jetpack.io. Let's quickly check in Google Chrome if it finally compiled. I don't know. Still in the log. Maybe we need to click on that. It's starting. And yeah, you can basically see your log here. It's still working on that. You can see it's still here's an unfinished task. So I'll just wait here. And when that is done, you can see you hopefully get such a green file icon. If something went wrong, it will be red. You can also click on that to see that. But if it's green, everything went well. We can then jump back to Android Studio here in our Android library project. And in the end, just click synchronize now. So it will now use that repository, and it will then include the dependency from Jetpack. When that was synchronized, we can go to main activity and just try out if we can access our image preview. And there it is. That now doesn't come from our local module. So even if we would remove that, then we could still include this image preview. And you can also test this if you can include that dependency at home in your project. Then that will also work. So that is it for this video. I hope you now fully understand how you can build an Android library in Android Studio and actually also deploy that to Jetpack so other people can use it. If this was helpful for you, then you will for sure also find my email newsletter helpful, which is fully free. you will get regular Kotlin Android architectural advice right into your inbox. So make sure to click the link down below and actually subscribe to that newsletter for free. Apart from that, I wish you an excellent day and I hope I see you in the next video again. Bye bye.